British music record producer and engineer Haydn will be giving a lecture at Digital October about the details of working with artists and record companies. But we're really lucky here on Primetime because we get to talk to the man firsthand. So you are going to be lecturing on that subject. Any secrets that you can share with the viewers?
Well, it's going to be a lecture, I suppose, basically about my experiences working, particularly within the British music industry over the past 40 years, and the changing values and changing ways we have to deal with artists and recording music, and also the changing roles of major record companies and the emerging roles of independent record companies. And basically the psychology as well as the technicalities of recording music. Very
interesting and very modern, I should say. And obviously you're the man to ask because you are an award-winning engineer.
An award-winning engineer. Yeah.
Very humble though. I like that you mentioned psychology. It's something that I've also sort of seen in interviews in the past that you have given to other journalists about the fact that working with an artist, psychology comes first.
It does. I think it's very, very important to establish mutual trust and mutual respect, and to understand, really understand how difficult it is for the artist, because the artist is very exposed and can be very nervous. Even very successful artists can feel quite naked in a recording studio, so it needs to be a sort of a very comfortable atmosphere and a frank atmosphere where a producer can say, look, I think maybe that phrasing could be improved. And you have to judge, just like any human relationship, it's the same. There's a million ways to say the same thing.
Yes,
and you try,
very true.
Yeah, and you try and choose the most effective, the kindest and the most efficient way of saying something to get the result, to basically make musician or artists feel confident to be able to do something.
Do artists get intimidated when they know that they'll be working with you?
No.
Seriously?
No, artists are the centre of their own universe. They're never intimidated.
Oh, okay.
No, there's not a... I mean, it's not a
but they do tend to get nervous for other reasons.
They tend to get nervous because they're so exposed, and singing is quite hard. I mean, singing is the most...
Tell me, I can't sing at all.
No, but it's the most revelatory thing. Basically, I mean, the artist, I say, is basically naked in front of you.
It's very intimate, yeah.
Yeah, it's very intimate. So it's not dictatorial at all. It's very rarely dictatorial. It's normally a combined effort. Yeah, with a common aim and trying to work to the same thing.
What's a common mistake that someone would make as an engineer working with an artist?
I think a common mistake, and I think it's a terrible mistake, to be honest, is for the engineer or producer to think that it's their record. It's never my record. It's never a producer's record. It's never an engineer's record. It's always the artist's record. And the artist has to live with that record at least for 2 years, possibly 3 years, touring, promoting, and feeling secure in that record. People like me, we're doing another record tomorrow. So I never ever claim ownership of a record or a recording. Never.
Fantastic. Roughly, in numbers, how many records do you go through in a year? One every day?
No. I mean, a record can take 3 or 4 months to make. So also, for instance, I'm making a record at the moment with a Russian artist, which is another one of the reasons I'm here in Moscow.
I wanted to ask you about that man.
Yeah, Igor Grigoriev. And this is taking us about 3 months to make. I did another record earlier, later, last year. and it took with a British, well, she's in fact Georgian, but she lives in Britain, a girl called Katie Melua, and that took 6 days to make. So it depends on the sort of record. With Igor's record, we're combining lots of different styles, and so it takes longer.
He came as a bit of a surprise to me, a bit of a blast from the past, because I know him as the man who was behind an iconic Russian magazine called Om.
So I hear.
In the 90s.
So I hear.
And he's quite a character.
I love him. I really, really think he's special, actually. I didn't know anything about his past, and a friend of mine sent me sort of 4 artists, Russian friend, sent me 4 artists that she thought I may be interested in working with. And as soon as I heard Igor, I thought, this is fantastic. This is completely new, very, very different, very creative, and it's just the sort of thing that excites me. It wasn't formulaic at all, and we formed a very strong relationship and friendship. I love him. I think he's a fantastic singer. He's not a Pavarotti, you know. He's not.
He's a pop singer.
Technically, he's not the most fabulous singer, but from a communicative point of view, I think he's wonderful. I love voices that communicate. You know,
yeah, it's like just a personality.
Neil
really.
Young, for instance, isn't a fabulous singer, but he communicates so beautifully, and Tom Waits communicates beautifully. Hasn't got a fabulous voice.
Yeah, when we go through...
Igor's like this. Igor's got this absolute passion and belief in what he does, and he's very convincing. So I love him, actually. It's great.
So you've mentioned that you've been sort of offered this selection of Russian artists.
Yes.
Is there a bit of a market for Russian musicians at the moment?
I don't know.
Because it looks like the ones that work here,
honest,
they find it very hard to expand and become world known.
Yeah,
or at least known in Europe.
I think it's very hard. I think, especially in England. England doesn't really listen to any other language. In England, you only hear music by English artists or American artists. So it's very, very difficult for England to accept another language artist.
The English musical market is, of course, one of the greatest. And then we know that the British musicians, the next step for them is US.
Yes, yeah. From a financial point of view, not necessarily from a musical point of view.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I'm a bigger fan of the British musical production and scene. So I'm chuffed to have you in the studio.
Thank you. I'm chuffed to be here.
The artists that you've worked with, I mean, the list just goes on. We've got Kate Bush, we've got Pet Shop Boys, we've got, I don't know, a-ha, Leona Lewis from the sort of younger scene. When you say that you work with these artists, what is it necessarily, sort of step by step? How does the magic work?
Well, I do more or less the same thing all the time with whatever artist. And the magic is really created by the artist. I've made, very simply, I've made lots of great records, and I've made lots of terrible records. And
I don't believe that.
The difference is the artist. You know, so I don't use specially bad techniques with specially bad artists, or specially good techniques with especially good artists. So the magic is it may be a 2-way or a 3-way thing. It can be a magic that happens in the studio when people are together. It can be a magic when there's a particularly wonderful performance from an artist singing. And I think, I'm not saying that my contribution is negligible, but it is, I try to be as sympathetic and as sensitive to what is happening right now as I possibly can be. And I'm actually very, very focused when I'm in the studio. I'm completely unfocused when I'm outside of the studio. But in the studio, that's the only thing that matters, is what's happening right now.
Is it true that you attribute quite a lot of things to luck and intuition?
Intuition more than luck, I think.
I mean, for example, I read about you speaking about microphones, how there are particular microphones that you sort of intuitively feel that would work better for this or that artist.
Yes, yeah. But
is it technical, or is it...
I think that comes from experience. You you know, it's like driving a car. You know which gear to change to or something. Or
it's not that simple, I'm
no,
sure.
No, it is experience. You can hear. I mean, I'm fascinated by sound. I'm listening to your voice now, and I listen to people's voices a lot, and I listen to the sound in this room. I'm hearing the sort of reverberation. I'm not a genius. I've always been fascinated by sound. As a child, I was fascinated by stones knocking together, or throwing pebbles into a pond, or water going down a plug hole in the bath. So I'm listening all the time.
It's a passion sublimated, really.
Yeah, well, it's something I can't avoid being fascinated by. And experience will tell you what microphone would be a good microphone for that particular voice, whether that voice has got lots of transients, whether it's got lots of sibilance, all these sort of technical things. And you just, quite often with a singer, I'll try 3 or 4 different microphones that I think may be suitable. And to get slightly technical, there's different signal chains, there's different compressors, different EQs, different mic amps. There's a whole series of things that I'm fortunate now in that I don't really have to think that much about it. It just becomes second nature.
Yeah. Oh, and how much does it have to do with the fact that technology has become so much more advanced?
Not much. Not much.
Really.
I mean, technology has become very much advanced insofar as the recording medium, the digital recording medium, the way the sound is stored and the way the sound is manipulated. The actual method of recording and the placement of mics hasn't really changed over the past 30 years. I mean, lots of the microphones we use are 30 years old, 40, 50 years old, as well as some more modern ones, of course. Yeah. But the techniques of recording haven't really changed that much, to be honest.
What about the feel of the industry with, you know, the internet booming, file sharing, that sort of situation?
Well, I'm passionately against peer-to-peer.
It sort of kills the purpose of making music and making it doesn't allow it to make money.
No, it's just horrible. I gave a talk once at a university in London, and I asked the students, how many of you have bought an album over the past year? And 2 people have bought an album. And how many of you have legally downloaded an album? Maybe it was about 10. And how many of you have illegally downloaded an album?
Leached.
50 of them.
Yeah.
I said, and you want to make a living out of the music business? You're fools, you're idiots. So I'm passionately against that. But I think I'm one of those people that think the music business is booming. Lots of people have asked me, oh, what do you think about the crisis in the music business? There isn't a crisis, it's just changed.
Attributing it to the fact that it's all out there with MySpace and these
Yeah, it's just changed. There's still a lot of people making a lot of money, and the music business is fairer now to artists than it's ever been. Excuse me. Artists get much better deals than they could have got 30 years ago. They're not ripped off. Artists are looked after much more professionally. And I don't think it's in crisis at all. It's just changed. It's in crisis for certain sort of dinosaur organisations.
Yeah.
It's not in crisis. People always want to play music and people always want to listen to it.
It just needs to evolve. All right, well, thank you very much. It's very optimistic.
It's my pleasure.
Haydn Bendel, legend of engineering, British, also a music record producer from the UK. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. Thank you.